opportunity is, after a tremendous speaker like that, we have two more that are going to engage in a debate. We have Dr. Robert Atkinson, is the founder and president of the Information Technology and Innovations Foundation, a Washington, D.C. based technology policy think tank, as well as Michael Calabrese. He is the vice president of the New American Foundation, a nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy institute. I'm not going to go any further in your bios because I'd much rather get into a discussion, if that's all right with you, gentlemen. Well, fantastic. Let's get started by getting grounded on the issues, and I'll ask each panel member an opportunity, give each panel member an opportunity to answer this question, and I'd ask you limit your response to 1 minute. And on my new BlackBerry device, I actually have a stopwatch. So, first of all, Mr. Calabrese, what is net neutrality? Why is it important to us as state lawmakers and business peoples? If you could, describe that.
Okay, so net neutrality is essentially what we have today on the Internet. As the Commissioner said, the Internet isn't broken. And today, at least whoops, getting a lot of feedback here. The wireline Internet, at least, particularly that, operates under principles of network neutrality today, which essentially means that all bits that flow over the network are treated equally. So it's very much like the common carrier phone system, where it's an end-to-end network. In fact, that's how it got that way because, of course, originally the Internet started as a dial-up system over the phone network, which had common carrier regulation, meaning that the phone company could not get in the middle and decide it's going to charge, say, some companies that are making good money selling over the phone, not going to charge them an extra fee to reach the customer. Instead, it's just up to the end customers to pay for the cost of the network, which is completely unmediated. And that's exactly also why it continues to be important, because it means that the giants of today cannot, two reasons. One, the giants of today cannot get sort of locked in and squelch innovation at the edges. Because if the Googles of the world can pay AT&T and Verizon to get prioritized delivery and degrade everybody else, then that means that the next startup and the creator at home and your kids doing videos in your basement and so on, aren't going to be able to communicate over the Internet on an equal basis. And secondly, because you want to incent capacity, not scarcity. If we make it profitable to keep capacity scarce, then that's what will happen. If instead we say, no, the only way you can make more profit is to expand the capacity of the pipes, then that's what will happen.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Atkinson.
Net neutrality is really three related but distinct issues. The first one is the issue of blocking or degrading. Can the network provider or the ISP block or degrade particular sites? There was a famous case of that. Unfortunately, I think it was Wisconsin. Madison River was Wisconsin. Right, Madison River. Very well-known case if you follow this. A small telephone company in Wisconsin that decided it didn't like competition, and so it said, we're going to block Skype, which is the online VoIP service, internet telephony service. And the FCC appropriately, very quickly slapped them down and prohibited them from doing this, which was exactly the right thing to do. So there's that issue. That's really the only case that's ever emerged in the U.S. to my knowledge. The second issue, which is also what Michael talked about, which is the issue of can a content provider or an application provider pay a little bit more to get prioritized service? The Commissioner talked about gaming. One of the things gaming needs is it needs what's called low latency. So you can have high speeds but high latency. In other words, it takes a long time between when you press the button and when something happens. Certainly there are business models out there where a gaming company might come to a Comcast or an AT&T and say, we'll give you a few cents per customer if you prioritize the packet a bit to give us low latency. The third thing is what's called network management. Network management is essentially saying that the networks, do they have the ability to manage their network? So for example, in periods of high congestion, sort of think about a road at rush hour, they might be able to sort of slow down some uploads or move bits around so that most consumers get better service. In my view, all three of these things are legitimate practices. They should be able to do that. And the real issue is you don't want them to do these things that are anti-competitive or anti-consumer, like the case of Madison River. On the other hand, there are lots and lots of things where they need to do this, where they're pro-consumer and pro-competitive. So in my view, this kind of black and white framing is simply the wrong way to look at it. There's some good things that need to be done, and there's some bad things that shouldn't be done.
Fantastic. Thank you. Next, I would ask, the FCC wants to add more regulation to the Internet. Why are these rules needed, and what will be the impact these rules will have on the national goal of high-speed Internet to every American? Dr. Atkinson?
Well, I think you have to sort of, the first question to ask in all this is the practice legitimate or not? And the second question to ask is, what do we need to do about it? I agree with Michael, and I agree with most of the people who are on the sort of do something about net neutrality, that there are many things that are just simply inappropriate and should not be allowed. For example, blocking competitors' websites. That's not what the Internet is all about. On the other hand, though, I think that the risk of regulation in this case is that you could end up with a overly prescriptive and overly restrictive regulation or legislation that could limit legitimate activity. So I'll give you an example. There's a bill in the House of Representatives that Mr. Markey has proposed. And the problem with that bill, one can interpret that bill as essentially saying that the AT&T U-verse service would be illegal. For those who don't know, AT&T is providing a television service over their wire, so they send fiber out to the node, what's called, and then they run their broadband and TV service over the copper loop. Now that's running on the same line, but it's sort of technically segmented. So there's still one wire going to your house. Part of that wire is being used for Internet bits. Part of it's being used for Internet TV. Now, under the Markey bill, one could interpret that bill to say that that's illegal because it's prioritizing certain kinds of services, i.e. TV. We clearly don't want that outcome. If AT&T, for example, can't do that, and they can only sell just Internet service, no one's going to get the Internet service because people want triple play. They want TV and Internet and phone. So I think there's risk to regulation. Let me just finish. I know I'm a little over. I would actually do what the Canadian regulators just did, which is more about we're going to have very, very aggressive oversight. We're going to have very close watch on what companies do, and if they do something inappropriate, we'll have the authority to go after them, as opposed to a sort of upfront regulation and rule which to me could limit innovation.